on the brink of a massive winter shift with some brutal cold and serious snow potential over the coming month. Hey, welcome in, folks! Happy Wednesday, November 19th. We're continuing to break down this pattern change we've been tracking, and it's finally getting close enough to really show up in our model data. All those big picture climate drivers we've been mentioning, the MJO, the NAO, the polar vortex, and all that other fun, fancy terminology you hear are finally starting to line up in the near-term guidance. I'm going to break it all down for you. I'm going to show you the deep dive I can't do on TV, which we have plenty of time for here, and give you the absolute latest. Now, if you're new to the channel, a huge welcome to you. If you haven't already, go ahead and like the video and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that bell for the latest notifications. Doing all that is the best way to stay weather-wise. It helps get these videos directly to you, and with the active pattern we have on the way, it's definitely going to be worth it. Best part? It's completely free. It won't cost you a penny. All it does is help you stay informed and help support the channel. Alright folks, let's dive right into it today. We don't want to waste any more time. We'll start with what's next to me, our European AI model. Those two big fancy letters, right? A and I. They're really starting to change the game here, in the world of weather. We've had about a year or so to see what these models can do, and so far, they've performed incredibly well. Generally speaking, sometimes even outperforming our more traditional physics-based models like the normal Euro and the GFS, or the American model you hear about so often. So what is this showing us? Well, it's backing up everything we've been talking about. We're looking at a pretty warm week or so ahead, maybe even less than that now, say 5 or 6 days. And then, there it is. You see those blues starting to plunge down into the eastern United States? I think it's coming in multiple waves. I believe right after Thanksgiving, it's looking much more likely that we'll get a solid blast of cold air for just about everyone here east of the Rockies. And then, as we kick off December, another major shot of cold air is on the table. Where does that one land? That's still up for debate, but we're going to explore all the possibilities right here in this video. And obviously, when your chances for cold air go up, you automatically increase the potential for snow as well, especially as we get into December. That's when climatology starts to work a little more in our favor. Alright, so what's happening out there right now? Before we jump into the long-range forecast, I do want to give you a quick update on the near term. We won't spend too much time on this. I know you're all probably here for the snow talk later on, but like I said, a warm-up is coming first, and you can already see it on our satellite imagery. Notice how the jet stream is starting to arch northward today? That's what's pulling that warmer air up. I am expecting a storm system to spin up, which could bring some rainfall, and maybe even a little severe weather and snow for some of us. But this is going to be a much warmer system than the last couple we've seen. You can already see that with the jet stream, like I said, buckling and pulling that energy north with it. As for the radar, we did see some snow yesterday. If you're watching from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Michigan, New York, or Connecticut, drop a comment and let me know what you saw. I was sound asleep for the entire event last night, so tell me, did you wake up to any accumulation? Or maybe you didn't. Perhaps you got some white rain, as we call it, where it snows but melts on contact, basically like rain. Definitely give me those reports down in the comments. I always love to hear from you. And then we've got some rain popping up in the Dakotas and Minnesota. We've also got some rain back in the desert southwest, where our next storm system is just starting to get organized. So yeah, those reports are also incredibly helpful, so I would love to see those in the comments. Also, I wanted to give a quick shout out. I'm not going to name drop because I'm not sure if they'd want their name out there, but I got a really nice work email yesterday. Somebody said they were watching from pretty far from Charlotte, but they told their friends or family down this way to tune in. So please, always feel free to reach out to me on social media as well. Kind messages like that truly make my day. So a huge thank you to the person who reached out. And you can always feel free to do the same. My social media info is linked in the description. All right, that's the end of the intro. Now, let's get into the good stuff. We'll start by looking at the models for the near term, and then we're diving straight into that winter weather forecast right after. All right, let's break down the near term for you really quickly. And overall, it's pretty boring across the eastern United States. I'll zoom this out in a second to show you the whole country. But you can see that next storm system taking shape throughout the day today. It's just beginning to produce some rain out towards Texas and Oklahoma. This is by tomorrow morning on Thursday, showing pretty widespread rain from the Ozarks through much of Oklahoma and even back into New Mexico. I can't see it perfectly on this view, but I'll zoom it out for you in a moment. It's relatively dry in the eastern US for now, but that storm system starts pushing northward. By the time we get to Thursday evening and overnight, it's raining in Kansas and Colorado. We've still got rain in Oklahoma and Texas, and you can't rule out some severe weather on the southern side of that system. Again, I'm not going to dive deep into that in today's video since we're focusing on winter, but please be weather aware. And then you can see some of that rain by overnight Thursday into Friday morning, stretching east through the Tennessee and Ohio valleys. That's as far as this model run goes into Friday morning. Yeah, we've got some snow in Colorado, but mainly, like I said, this is a pretty warm system. The snow is stuck up in Canada, but it's not a very cold setup for us. I'll show it to you on the zoomed out view. This is the European model. You can see a pretty wet couple of days for the Four Corners and the Southern Plains right into your Thursday, and then it starts to pull east. Here we are by Friday evening, and like I said, it's a pretty showery type of event. As I mentioned earlier, there could also be some severe weather. I don't think it'll be a full-blown outbreak, but we'll keep an eye on it as it works through the Ohio Valley and then moves out. By the time we get to, let's see, this is Saturday afternoon. Yeah, we've got some showers and maybe some storms over the mid-Atlantic, but most of the country goes quiet, and it stays that way all the way until right about here. This is next Monday and Tuesday. This is when the pattern change really begins, right before Thanksgiving. That's when the cold air starts to dive south. A storm system could try to link up with it, and I think from here on out, we really start to settle back into a more winter-like pattern. So, for what you've been waiting for, let's talk about it. Let's break down the when, where, how strong, and why over the rest of the video. Drum roll, everybody! Right? Something like that. It's that time, though. Yeah, let's get to the nerdy stuff. Let's get into the nitty-gritty meteorology again, the stuff I can't show you on TV because there's just not enough time. That's really what it boils down to. Let's get to that 500 millibar height anomaly map, and we'll start with the European model. This is the classic Euro, the physics-based European, and then I'll show you the European AI, the new kid on the block. And after that, I'll show you the European ensembles. Now, you're probably wondering, well, Gerald, why not the GFS? Frankly, the GFS has been really struggling this year. So I'm going to stick to the models that have been performing better. I think that'll give us a much clearer picture, and ultimately, a better forecaster. Alright, so what are we looking at? Well, for the short term, basically all three of the models I'm about to show you are in agreement that this ridge is about to flex its muscles over the eastern US. You remember those? Fiery orange and red colors? Yeah, those are our heat miser zones. And the blues? That's snow miser territory. That's where you have a better shot at chilly weather and some stormy action. But hey, it doesn't automatically mean a snow day for everyone, so don't see blue and start planning a snowball fight just yet. But it gives you the key ingredients for it, or at least some of them. Of course, for some of you, getting snow is way easier than for others, so it's a complex recipe. But no matter how you slice it, the map is showing that red and orange setting up over the eastern US for the immediate future. So, when does the pattern flip? Well, we might see a little sliver of cold dive down from Canada's Hudson Bay and just clip the northeast this weekend. But the real times cold I've got my eye on, arrives right about here. We're talking next Tuesday. And check out what it's showing. You've got cold air starting to brew and plunge down from Canada. I know it looks tiny at first, but trust me, it's going to grow in a second. And then you've got these little shortwave energy packets down south. Now, if those two can join forces, we could easily be looking at some wintry action across the central and northern United States in about a week or so. That's the timeline we're on. As we push this further out, you can see them connect, and then bam! Right after Thanksgiving, this is Black Friday, we're looking at that massive block of cold air takes a nosedive into the eastern US. Now, I know this won't be a snow day for everyone, but some of us could definitely squeeze some flakes out of this during that post-Thanksgiving weekend, the Black Friday weekend leading into December. But the bottom line is, cold air is on the menu. It's set to shatter this warm pattern that many of us have been experiencing. And when I say many, I don't mean all of you, my friends in the Northeast, have still been pretty chilly lately. But you can see how this all starts to filter in. Then, the models show that ridge trying to fight back, attempting to bring the warmth back to the east to kick off December. But you'll notice it's a short-lived victory because another huge blast of Arctic air is waiting in the wings. And this one is much stronger. With a direct connection to the Arctic, you can see you've got that blue stretching from way up in Canada all the way down into the United States, right at the end of the model run. That's from the good old, reliable, physics-based European model. Of course, when we're looking this far out, you have to be a little cautious, I guess. Let's take a look at the other two models. We'll check out the A. model and then the Ensembles, which are an incredible tool this time of year. But I'm saving that one for last, because hey, we save the best for last around here, right? Alright, let's turn to the new kid on the block, the European AI model. It's been performing pretty well lately, so what's it cooking up? Well, it's on the same page for the short term. We've got that ridge in the eastern US and that little bit of energy swinging down into the northeast, but let's pause it right here. It also agrees that by next Monday and Tuesday, a little faster on this model, by the way, we'll see a shot of cold air dropping into the northern Rockies with a small piece of shortwave energy just south of it. Now, if that southern shortwave gets ahead of the cold air, then our chances for winter weather are going to be limited. But either way, it shows this system developing. And just like the physics-based European model, it shows a huge trough of cold air digging into the eastern United States right after Thanksgiving. Now, this A-dot model is a bit quicker, suggesting maybe a chilly Thanksgiving day itself. The other model points to a fairly nice Thanksgiving, with the cold really settling in for Black Friday and beyond. But just like the other one, it shows this cold snap doesn't stick around for long. It's pretty transient. And the reason for that, folks, is that we're not seeing a strong Greenland block. To really lock in that cold, you need to see all these bright red colors setting up over Greenland, which acts like a roadblock, forcing that cold air to get stuck over the east. We just don't have that right now, so this cold air is more of a quick visit. That said, there are more rounds coming. You can see another shot appears, starting out west around December 1st, and then it tries to slide east as we head toward December 3rd. Or 4th, and that lines up pretty well with what the main European model is showing. So, to recap the two, we get a shot of cold air right after Thanksgiving, a brief warm-up in the east, and then another blast of cold. But the big question is where that second one will hit. That's going to be the million-dollar question. And now, for the ensembles. This is where we put it all together. Let me back this up and give you a little spoiler alert. Here we go. So, you've got that ridge in the short term, we've talked about that, we've beaten that horse to death, then here comes that big shot of cold air. The ensembles are in total agreement with both models on that one, right after Thanksgiving. But again, it's transient, it doesn't hang around. The ensembles then dump the next wave of cold back out west in the Rockies, and then slowly, over the 10 to 15 day range, it starts to nudge its way east. But I want you to notice something here. This is a really important part of the forecast. We've got this ridge over the eastern US that's starting to rear its ugly head. So I'm going to be straight with you folks. I think if you're east of the Appalachian Mountains, your snow chances aren't looking great, at least through, let's say, December 4th or 5th. Now, could that change? 100%. Don't get me wrong, but what I'm seeing right now is that this ridge is going to kind of be a party crasher. But here's the good news. I don't think it's going to last forever. Honestly, I believe we're going to kick off this winter pattern with better snow chances for the plains, the Midwest, and maybe even the Ohio Valley. But then, as we head deeper into December, we're going to start to boost those snowfall chances for the eastern US. So, why the change? Well, I think the NAO could turn slightly positive right at the start of December. That would create a pattern where the trough, or that dip in the jet stream, is maybe a little bit further west than we'd ideally like. On top of that, another pattern, the MJO is running a little behind schedule. The MJO should shift into a more favorable phase for us once we get to, say, the middle of December. Now, I know that sounds like it's a long way off, but if you're dreaming of a white Christmas, I think the puzzle pieces are starting to fit together nicely. It's actually better to let the plains and the northern US get their snow early in December, build up that snowpack, and then have the pattern become more favorable for the east as we get deeper into the month. But like I said, that doesn't mean you're guaranteed to see zero snow before then. So let's dive a little deeper into the models, talk about those teleconnections, and then we'll wrap up the video by looking at the ensemble chances, seeing some snow over the next 15 days or so. Alright, now that you've got the big picture upstairs, let me show you the potential for a Thanksgiving storm, and then we'll get into those teleconnections. Here is the European model, and you can see it starts to get its act together right around this coming Monday or Tuesday. And remember, you can always check the timestamp right above my head. You can see 10 a.m. on November 24th, so it should be pretty easy, to follow along. But as we push this forward, you'll see the storm isn't really a big snowmaker for most of us. Canada gets a pretty epic blizzard, but for us, the cold air is just trailing too far behind the main energy. So instead, we're looking at more of a chilly, wet rain. This is what it looks like by Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. We're looking at some scattered showers and storms for a lot of us. But then, by Thanksgiving afternoon, that front starts to make its move. You see all these blue contours that I'm tracing in pink? Because why would I trace it in blue? That would just make way too much sense, right? That's the cold front crashing the party, and it really digs in by the time we get to Black Friday. And you can see that first big blast of cold air right there. Now, I will mention it's packing some serious lake effect snow potential. You can see that firing up here in the Northeast and over the Great Lakes. It's definitely showing some muscle, but for the storm itself, the Euro model is mainly showing rain, at least for now. Now, here's the GFS model. Let me back that up. Whoops, didn't mean to show you that far out. You got a little spoiler there from La La Land. So definitely take that with a huge grain of salt. As my buddy Mitch West would say, that is times, not times, a forecast. But here we go. With the Thanksgiving storm, here comes that little southern piece of energy, and it starts to cruise on through. This is what we're looking at for this coming Monday afternoon as it moves through the Ohio Valley. Again, the cold air up north is lagging behind it, so right now it doesn't look like they're going to team up for a major snowstorm. But you can see the GFS does bring in some rain. This would be for Tuesday afternoon, and then by Wednesday afternoon, things look a whole lot drier. And here you go, for Thanksgiving and Black Friday, that cold air starts to seep southward and brew up some weird little mischief in the Carolinas for Black Friday. Are we actually getting snow in the Carolinas on Black Friday? I'm extremely skeptical, to say the least, but that's what the GFS is putting down. More importantly, it also shows that lake effect snow machine cranking up in the Northeast. All right, so those are the two big models for the Thanksgiving storm. As you can see, it might not be a blockbuster, but we're setting the stage. It's going to drag that cold air in and start putting the pieces back together for better snow chances down the road. And another huge piece of that puzzle is the teleconnections. So let's get into that. This is the really fun part of long-range forecasting, so let's break it all down for you. All right, let's dive into the even nittier-grittier stuff. We'll kick things off with the polar vortex. You know, that famous term everyone loves to throw around for clicks on social media, myself included. So hey, don't act like I'm above it. But what the heck even is it? And is it going to make a comeback this winter? Well, let's start with the what is it part, shall we? The polar vortex is basically a giant spinning pool of brutally cold air that's normally locked up over the polar regions, up in the Arctic. You know, where Santa is loading up the sleigh this time of year. And what can happen is, whenever it starts to weaken, you might think, oh no, it's losing the cold. But that's actually fantastic news for snow lovers. When it weakens, it starts to unleash that cold air, sending it south. Now, that's just one part of the puzzle. The other part is, where does it go? A lot of the time, that cold gets sent over to Siberia and Europe. For the United States, it could hit the western US or the eastern US. So it's never a guaranteed slam dunk for cold in a place like Cleveland, New York, Chicago, or Charlotte, or Atlanta for that matter. It could really go anywhere, that's the point I'm making. But for forecasting, we use a tool that looks something like this. This is the U wind chart, and I'm going to draw a pink line right here. This is our starting point, or at least where the model run begins. Realistically, we're more like right here now. Notice how we're starting to see these lines dive down the map? Basically, all of these are different possible outcomes. So, just like the European ensembles I show you, all the members that dip below this pink line, which I'll circle in black here, just so it stands out, indicate that the vortex is going to weaken and start sending that cold air southward. And that is a pretty high number of models all pointing to the same thing. The timing on that looks to be right around the start of December. So that first shot of cold air right after Thanksgiving might not even be related to the polar vortex. In fact, I think that's more of a classic polar front. An Arctic front, though those are the ones that bring the times, real times, bone-chilling cold. And that's what some of the model data is hinting at with that second shot of cold air I mentioned, coming around the first week of December. Now, where is the bullseye? Right now, it's kind of favoring the plains. Could that shift? Oh, absolutely. We'll have to see. But this is one of the big reasons for that potential, and it looks to stay pretty negative through, maybe even the first half of December. Now let's talk about the MJO. This picture is a little blurry. I grabbed it from a blog on weather.us, so definitely check them out. Obviously, I did not make this graphic, so I'm not going to take credit for it, but it does a fantastic job of showing what we need to talk about. The MJO has 8 phases, from 1 through 8. And notice phase 1, I'm going to circle it. I'm going to circle phase 2, and I'm going to circle phase 8 right here. These are our money phases for cold in the eastern United States. These are the phases you want to see if you're hoping for wintry weather. So again, keep in mind, 1, 2, and 8, those are the key players. You can see all the blue across the United States indicating cooler weather. And again, I know it's a bit fuzzy, but just trust me if you can't quite see it. All the other phases, 7, 5, and let's see, 5, 3, 4, right? I think I got all the numbers. And 6. Yeah, that's the other one I was forgetting. Those are all warmer phases. So what about the MJO? What's it up to? Well, right now we are in phase 6, and obviously that's one of the warmer ones. Remember, I said 8, 1, and 2 are the cold ones. 6 is a warm phase. We're going to start rotating into phase 7, it looks like, from now through about the first week or so of December. And that's one of the reasons I also think that pesky southeast ridge of high pressure could hang on for a bit longer. Again, the MJO is still in a warmer phase, so we're battling that. But what starts to happen once we get around the middle of December, or even after the first week? We start to rotate into phase 1, and that, my friends, is when things could start to get colder. So like I've been saying, no matter what, snow chances are rising from Thanksgiving onward, but we might have to be patient and wait our turn here in the east, especially east of the Appalachian chain. I think we might see the northern plains and the Midwest get some action first. And then, maybe a week or so into December and heading toward the holidays, just in time, some of the pieces really start to fall into place, suggesting it could be our turn as well. But that's not the only thing. We've also got the NAO to look at. So let's go ahead and check that out and talk about how it could affect the forecast. And then I'll show you the snowfall probabilities on the ensembles. Here's another piece of the puzzle. This is the NAO, or the North Atlantic Oscillation, if you want to get technical. It has 2 phases, the positive phase and the negative phase. We've talked about this the past couple of days. Basically, a negative phase is our best friend for snow in the east. You can see it here on the left-hand picture. The jet stream takes a big nosedive into the eastern US that brings the cold air and a favorable storm track for snow. A positive phase is more zonal, as we say, which just means a flatter, west to east flow across the country. That just brings in milder air and a less defined storm track. So, if you want snow in the east, you're rooting for a negative NAO. So, how's that looking? Play out in the coming weeks? Well, it looks like we're starting to climb our way into a more positive phase right up until about December 1st, according to the GFS Ensembles. Now, I really wish I had the European data to back this up, but unfortunately, it's just not available to me. And you can see right here, as we approach this point, I'll try to keep that black line there for you. Oh, never mind, it's in the way, but this is where we start to trend positive. And that's exactly what I think is going to encourage that pesky southeast ridge to hang around, unfortunately. That's why this cold air is going to be a bit of a revolving door. It'll show up, then it'll leave, and then it'll be back again. It's not getting locked into place like we'd want with a solid negative NAO, so that's definitely something we're keeping an eye on. But then, look at this. Right at the end of the run, a ton of the model members, just like I said, after the first week of December or so, start to plunge it back into negative territory. And if that happens, folks, that is fantastic news for all you snow lovers in the eastern United States. We could finally be in a position to drag some of that Arctic air and that active storm track out of the plains and send it our way. But you'll notice the spread of possibilities here is huge. A lot of models are showing positive and a lot are showing negative. But the general consensus for now seems to be a turn towards positive, and then maybe after the first few days of December, we start heading back into the negative, which, as I mentioned, would be a huge win for snow lovers. Alright, so that's the deal with the NAO. Let me show you 2 more maps before I let you go, and that's going to be the snowfall probabilities from the ensembles. First up, let's look at the European ensembles. And what are they showing? Well, not a whole lot of snow chances between now and right about here, which is Wednesday of next week. So, like I said, the next week is looking pretty warm and, let's be honest, pretty boring for all you snow fans out there. That's why we have to look 1,000 miles down the road. But here we go. By next Wednesday, as I mentioned, we've got that storm system brewing up in Canada. Could a piece of that clip parts of the northern United States? It sure could. Could it link up with the cold air and produce its own snow? That's also on the table. You can also see the European ensemble is starting to hint at snow chances in the Rockies. And as we push this further into the future, it starts to creep into the plains. Now, we're not talking high chances, but they're better than 0, so we're watching it. And then the bigger story, as I've been saying, is the much higher shot at snowfall for the Great Lakes. We're talking lake effect snow right after Thanksgiving. This would be the 29th. So we're talking right after Black Friday, stretching into Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New York, all the classic lake effect snow zones. And as you let it play out, notice what starts to happen, kind of what I've been hinting at. Higher snow chances popping up in the plains and the Midwest. Now, for the northern US, like I said, that southeast ridge could be a pain. This would probably mean a storm track that looks something like this. And I know how annoying that is for my friends in the Carolinas, Virginia, and along the I-95 corridor. But hey, this isn't a bad thing. Remember, the more snowpack we can build up there in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and the surrounding states, the better it is for us in the long run. Especially if the pattern flips right after that snow is on the ground, it's going to make it so much easier by mid-December to possibly get a southeastern snowstorm or a mid-Atlantic blockbuster. You know, for all the places that are itching to see some flakes fly. Now here's the GFS ensemble, and I'll show you the same time frame. There's that northern stream energy right in the middle of next week. This is Tuesday, Wednesday. Then it dives further south and shows the potential for Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, and Iowa to get in on the action, much like I showed you, and it even tries to send some northwest flow down into the Appalachian chain. We'll have to see if that actually pans out, since it's obviously pretty far out. And yeah, it keeps the snow chances pretty high across the northern US through the first couple of days of December. I think that's a scenario that's looking more and more likely. And then after that, like I keep saying, the middle of December is when I truly believe things are going to turn much more favorable for the United States east of the Appalachian chain. But until then, we'll build that snowpack, we'll take these shots of cold air, and we'll keep on thinking snow. But I've got to be honest, I am feeling pretty optimistic about December. Some of us might have to wait until later in the month, but all things considered, the pattern looks pretty good. You know, when you increase the number of chances for snow, one of them is bound to hit eventually, right? So that's the great thing about all these teleconnections we've been watching. All right, that's what I've got for y'all. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday, and a quick reminder, I'll be live tomorrow night with BGWX. We are going to break this whole thing down. I'll drop a link sometime today and share it on social media, just so everyone remembers. I think we're aiming for a 7:30 start time. So we're going for that, and yeah, we've got that coming up. I'll also be on WCCB this weekend, and of course, I'll still have a Friday video for you all. By the way, for my local viewers, if you're out and about for WCCB, I'll be at the Concord Christmas Parade, the Monroe Christmas Parade, and the Novant Health Uptown Parade by next Wednesday. And I think we've also got Morganton and Rock Hill on the list as well. So if you live in any of those towns, you might just see me on the float. So definitely wave and say hi if you happen to make it out to any of those events. All right, everyone, have a great one, stay safe, and think snow. I'll catch you all next time.